Are you ready to paint some flowers? This technique sounds hard, looks hard, but really it's not. I'm going to break it down step by step and go very slow, and I'm going to do it a million times over and over again, so that way you can learn how to make these awesome flowers and these really cool leaves. Here's another page that I also worked on. Now this is considered homework. We're just practicing here. All of this is just practice, okay? So I don't want you to get stressed out and, oh, I can never do these, because you can't. Trust me. Once upon a time, I was not good at this, but I practiced and look, now I can do it. And it's a lot of fun. These are so cool. So I'm going to break it down step by step. We're going to have a good time. And remember, don't stress, because if you stress, it's not going to happen. But if you have a good time and you relax and just let the paint go, your flowers will be super cool. For today's fun painting practice / class, I will be using some mixed media paper instead of a canvas. The reason why is to help save money, because all I'm doing today is having a fun practice, so there's no stress, no headache or anything. Take your time, enjoy the process, and hopefully we can come up with some really cool flowers for our next fun painting party on a canvas. Okay, so these people are not paying me any money to advertise. I just want to show you really quickly the products I'm using, solely for the fact that I get a million texts and emails every day asking me what products I'm using. So this is just to help me with my frame of mind, so I don't have to stress out answering the same question 100 times. So I'm going to use Mixed Media Pad. Basically, it was on sale, so that's pretty much the whole reason. I will be using acrylic paint. I like to buy books that have these kind of bindings, because it's easy to remove the paper. They stay nice and pretty. I'm put off to the side, keep my paper nice and good for the next time. And I like being able to take these things off the perforated edges. They do make a little bit of a mess, but it's still the cheapest way to go when practicing. With this method of what we're going to do today, I strongly recommend to practice. Now, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I find that the more I practice these, the better I get. And then when I go and do it, like I paint on wood and different things, my flowers come out way better if I practice first. Kind of like a warm-up. Okay, so I'm also going to be using a paper plate to put my paint on, so that way later I don't have to worry about having to clean it and scrape all the paint off of like a glass plate. Use paper, don't use styrofoam. Styrofoam's bad for the environment. So is paper, but it kind of biodegrades a lot faster. I also like to use paper towels to be able to wick my brushes dry, clean up spills. These are the brushes I'll be using today, a variety. These ones are Craft Smart. This is, they're angular brushes, honestly. I mean, really, it kind of doesn't matter what brand or brush you use. These just happen to have been on sale when I was at the store, so I bought them. They are synthetic. I usually prefer to use synthetic brushes when, that means the fibers here, the bristles, they're synthetic. This part's synthetic. So I prefer to use them over human hair and squirrel hair and all that. I prefer the synthetic because cruelty-free, but also at the same time, it's better. The longevity of the paintbrush tends to last a little bit longer. And I'm trying to save money. So that's really, at the end of the day, the whole deal. So synthetic, I think, are the way to go. I do like to get them in different sizes. Notice how I have a large, a medium, a small. This is a liner brush here, so really tiny little details. This brush is a Filbert Bright, which means the bristles are short, tiny, and compacted together. This part of the brush here is called the ferrule. And with a Filbert Bright, you'll notice it's a little bit more poofy down here at the bottom because it has a lot more of the strands put together tightly, and it's compact. It's good for little details. So yeah, those are the brushes. Okay, let's see, the paint.
today's paint I found on sale, so that is the only reason I'm using it. It's also, this is a folk art paint. I got it in all the colors, blue, red, orange over here. Got them for $2 at the store, pretty good deal. Now they are acrylic paint. Once again, they are not paying me to say this. This is not an ad for their brand. This is just to help me to not have a headache trying to answer a million questions, the same question a million times. So they're multi-surface paints, which means that multi-surface, like you could paint on paper, canvas, wood, possibly plastic. I mean, it's your imagination, honestly. So that's what they're saying here. It's the Plaid brand. I find that this brand of paint tends to be a little bit thicker consistency. And so because of that, I went ahead and bought this little guy. This is called Floating Medium. Now you don't need to use it. However, with painting these flowers that I'm going to paint today, I've noticed that the Floating Medium just really kind of like, it helps. It makes it so that way when I'm blending the two colors together on the brush, it's smoother, it floats. The colors float and blend together very nicely because the Plaid paint is a really thick-bodied paint. So this just helps loosen it up a little bit, kind of. I mean, you could kind of say that by adding this would mean that the paint would stay moisture longer, which I have noticed that, but they don't advertise that. Like, they can't, because technically that's not what it does. They have another product that they have. I forgot the name right now. I forgot the name of it, but anyways, they have another one that's for that. So this one they're advertising on the back over here just to help you your paints to blend. Now, I do want to take a quick moment. I have seen many people in my classes do this with their paintbrush. Don't do that. Don't be shaking your paint because you're just causing your paint to coagulate more. This is also a good technique for, like, you know, if you had nail polish or something, don't ever shake it. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take it like in your hands and roll it. See this? Now it does take a little bit longer and it's a little bit more annoying, but by doing this and rotating, like doing some up and sideways, moving it around as you rotate it, you get a better mixture within the jar. And oh, I have to say this, which I feel is really dumb that I shouldn't have to say this, but let me tell you, I have had so many students in my class where they open their little jars and then they walk away. And then, like, the stuff dries inside. So, fun little reminder, don't do that. Save your money. Make sure you close the lids when you're done. And rotate them. Don't shake them, because when you shake them, you're not getting an adequate mixing. Because sometimes when they do, especially like when you buy them at the store and if you're buying them on clearance, they've kind of been sitting for a while. So the chemicals that are inside of the bottle will tend to separate just ever so slightly. You'll see this more in like oil paints than you would acrylics. But, you know, oil paints have oil in them, whereas acrylic paints have water to make them gooey. So, but you still see a little bit, like they don't get a good mixture. So always before a painting session, take a moment, do this, I don't know, about 10-15 seconds. Okay, so let's go to the other art supplies. Oh, and I also have a white, buy a white too. I like to use 2 different water sources to clean brushes. I used to only ever just use this guy and use one. But what I found with myself is that I constantly kept having to run to the bathroom to go empty out the water. And I don't like that. That's like annoying and it's bad on the plumbing. So what I did was I've implemented 2 water sources. So I go into this is my dirty water. It's a paint can. I go into this water source first. I clean my brush pretty good. And then I go into here and I consider this my clean water. And so it's just to give my brush a second rinsing. Now I know it's redundant and it's annoying, but it'll help your brushes last longer and you can paint more paintings with them, therefore saving you money. So yeah, it's annoying, but you're saving money and it's better for the environment because you're using less brushes. Take care of your brushes. And I know, sometimes we buy our brushes on clearance and it's whatever, it was only $3 for a pack. But really, honestly, when you're painting on the level that I'm painting, where I'm doing 3 to 4 paintings a day, year round, I mean, that little $3 adds up, right? If you have to change your brushes between every single painting. So try to save money on that. Another thing that I wanted to mention here, when you buy your paint, I want to say I do this. I buy the primary colors, which are blue, red, and yellow. I always recommend primary colors. And then also, if you want to splurge a little bit, it's good to get secondary colors. Those are the colors that are between the primaries. So I'm going to do a little color wheel here for a second to explain what I mean. So here are my primary colors. I've got blue, red, and yellow. So between blue and red, I can have purple. If I mixed blue and red together, I would get purple. If I mixed a red and a yellow together, I would get the color orange. If I mix these two together. And then if I mix blue and yellow, I would then get a green. Now, you don't need to buy these secondary colors. You can mix colors to get the colors that you need. You can totally do that. That's like a thing. But sometimes that's just annoying. And honestly, they've got these at the store for $2 a bottle. So really, it's save yourself the heartache, because then you're going to end up buying more of these primary colors anyways. So especially, I mean, these guys are small. I always like to buy a white, and I usually buy, notice how the size of this white is a little bit bigger than this one. That's on purpose, because I tend to use a lot of value, which means adding white to your paint to change how light and dark it is. And so I tend to use a lot of white when I'm painting, especially if I have a dark surface laid down and then I want to add a lighter color on top of it. If I can then go and on that dark surface put a layer of white and then go and paint my other colors over it, those colors will then appear brighter and they're gonna pop more in the painting, and it's gonna be super cool. So I would recommend buying a little bit more white so you have extra. You can buy brown too. I find that brown is a good color to buy, because, I mean, yeah, okay, you can mix it. It makes sense. Like, there are many different ways you can mix brown. You can use red, an equal part red, equal part yellow to a half a part of blue would produce a really nice sienna color. If you're doing primaries and mixing, you get a sienna out of that, which is pretty cool. Everybody typically tends to use sienna a lot. Bob Ross that was his color. But I just buy it, honestly. I like to cheat a little bit, make it easier for myself. If you do buy brown, don't buy a whole lot of it unless you are painting a lot of nature scenes that are like trees and things that would be brown. Otherwise, I hardly use brown. I don't use a lot of. Okay, so because it's really like a highlight color and shadowy, and I used a lot of blues in my shadows. Okay, so on to the fun stuff now that we got all of the science out of the way here. Okay, so I'm going to use my paper because I'm practicing. Okay, I want to make sure I'm on camera here. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to pour out just a little bit of floating medium. Now, I don't use this often. I really do not. Floating medium is something that it came in a bigger bottle. They don't sell it at the store in a smaller bottle. But like, I do use it a lot for this technique. But when I'm using other techniques in my other classes, this is not something that I use a lot. But with this technique, I recommend splurge, spend an extra couple dollars, buy this. It'll make your flowers way cooler. It'll be a lot easier on you. I suffered for a long time. I'm not going to buy that. I don't need it. And then, like, they were cute, but they could have been, I feel that I've upped my game now that I'm adding this. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some carnations. I'm going to use some purple because just why not? And especially with this technique, sometimes I just like to go fun and crazy and just, you know, whatever colors, you know. I have a set over here that I use for neon colors, which is pretty cool. So it's pretty much up to your preference. Or like you could paint, you can paint like colors that would look good in your house. So for example, I've decorated a lot with blues in my house. I like blue. So blue flowers is a highlight in my paintings, kind of just make the colors in my living room pop and look nice. So yeah, go ahead and choose whatever color you want. Let's see, I'm going to use the medium because I want to make a bunch of little flowers. Okay, if you have any little flyaways or in your brush or anything, I strongly recommend that you take some scissors and cut away your little flyaways. That's usually if you buy really cheap quality brushes, or if you have used and killed your brush and stippled with it a whole bunch or something, you want to get it back to pretty, just go ahead, take some nice pretty scissors and be very careful and just trim it off ever so slightly. So now that we can see a little bit better on the camera, I want to show you these brushes that I'm using. Before, when I was showing you, I noticed it wasn't really picking up on the camera. So, okay, so these are angled brushes. Now, you don't need to use angled brushes when painting these flowers, but I have found that using the angled brush, just, you know, it's like training wheels, and I kind of get a little better of a flick when I'm doing it, and so my flowers kind of come out cuter. Angled means that, see this brush here, it's like, so it's a square, but yet you can see that it has an angle with the way that the bristles are cut. I have a large one, a medium-sized one, and a small one, and these are all angled already from the factory. Now, I also have a Filbert Bright here, company that used to make them a million years ago, no longer in business, but we still call them Filbert Brights because they made them very popular. Basically what it means, bright, is because it has, the reason why it's called a bright is it has a lot of bristles that are tightly compacted together. So tightly compacting the bristles is, it changes the shape, and so when you are using it, you don't have this like, your bristles aren't super floppy. They're more like together. Like if you were to have a hog bristle brush, you would get that more of that sensation that the bristles are very tight and compacted together. So this is good for making little tiny details, big ones. And then it's also a filbert, because they're kind of cut short. They're not long, like the fibers, the bristles are not very long. So that's the whole gist on that. I like this brush. I always tend to come back to it. This brush is the reason why some of my little spaces that I'm painting on my surface, why they are so detailed. This really helps me in the detailing. Now I also have this liner brush. Liner brushes typically at the store come with a little piece of plastic over it. Ugh, I killed it. Anyways, this little thing so you know it's liner. It protects it, nice pretty little point. It's not really going to show too well on the camera, but they are a tad bit pricey, but I recommend buying them and having them because, you know, if you need, like, let's say you're doing a portrait of a face and you wanted to do some eyeliner or something, or you have little tiny details, I really strongly recommend practicing. Now, the reason why today I'm using paper is because today is a practice session. I am not trying to create a piece that I am going to sell to anybody. I'm not trying to make something that's going to go on the wall. This is just practicing. So that's why I'm using paper today. Strongly recommend that you paint this flower 100 times in practice before you actually go and paint on a canvas. You'll have way better success and you'll save a lot of money in the long run. Okay, so I'm going to put those off to the side. Now I'm going to choose to go with my medium just because. Okay, So here we go. I'm going to show you how to load the brush. Very simple, straightforward, easy peasy. Okay, now if I didn't have the floating medium, you can just go straight into step 2. But step 1 is I'm going to dab a little, and then I'm going to get it all up in my brush. And get a nice little helping and just kind of dab it and pull. Don't push, okay? Just pull, dab and pull. Do not dab and push. So don't push that way. You always want to pull. Otherwise, you're going to ruin your bristles, and they're going to go get frayed and go in all different directions, and it's going to be a sad brush. Okay, so now that I've coated both sides, I'm going to go into my white and my purple. I am going to choose to make the outside of my flower kind of white, and the inside is going to be purple. So I'm going to come in here and pick up some white, a little triangle on one side. Then I'm going to come over here and pick up some purple. Now here's a close-up so you can see what my brush looks like. I got a slight little bit of purple and a little bit of white together, just like that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go back and forth a couple times, not too many, just enough to kind of blend it out just ever so slightly. I like what I got. And I notice how I still have a white strip and I still have a purple strip. That's very important that I don't mix too much, just ever so slightly bend of a bend of the bristle and back and forth. And it doesn't matter how many times you do it, just enough until you're comfortable. The more you do it, the more it's going to blend. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to turn over. Okay, right here. I want to make sure I'm on camera so you can see what I'm doing. Right? Okay. So now let's see. Let's do a carnation first, just because. You know what? Actually, let me teach you marigold first. It might be easier to learn that first. They're pretty much identical. They're very similar flowers. Okay. So I'm going to let it down, push up, and back down. That's it. That is literally it. So now I'm going to rotate I'm going to put this off to the side for just a second. I'm going to rotate my paper, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to set down, push up, bend around to the right, back down. Oops. I messed up just a little bit. You see how icky that turned out? That's okay. If that happens to you, here's how you fix it. Instead of coming back over and pushing down here, I'm just going to come over here slightly to the left. I'm going to push down, and I'm going to push up, round, and back down. Now I noticed that right here what's happening is I have too much of a blend. So the way I fix that is, since I have all purple and I need some white in there, is I come over here. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of this purple off of the tip. Kind of wipe that off just ever so slightly. And then I'm going to come back in here, bring some white, and then I'm going to rub it back and forth just a couple times so I can coat both sides of my brush, and there we go. So now, look at what my brush looks like. I have the two colors. I have a good strong area of white. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go back over what I painted. I'm going to press down, go up, round, and down. So then I'm going to come back over and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to press down, push it up and around like I'm making a comma. I still need white. Yep, I blended too much and I need some more white, so I'm going to pick up some more white over here. Now with doing these flowers, I strongly recommend you constantly figuring out the brush and resituating the brush. It is tedious. It is super tedious. But if you load your brush properly before you go to do this, then you're going to have better success when you are using the brush on the paper. You always want to have it correct and good first. It's like the concept of, if you want to have a good steak for dinner, you really need to have a good quality cut of meat. And so it's that concept with the brush. If you want a really pretty petal, then you're going to really need to have your brush really doing its thing and have it really nice and ready to go before you paint a petal. So now I have these. They're really cute, and this guy doesn't really match. I could, if I wanted to, paint over him, but I could leave him and let him be not that pretty. And by doing it, to allow a little bit of imperfection to happen, what that's going to do is it's going to appear to be more natural, and it's not going to be very cartoony. A lot of flowers have something that they're not really super symmetrical, or there's something not quite right with them. But then by doing that, it makes the flower more interesting. So if you have 1 or 2 petals that come out, leave them, let them be. It's a happy accident. Okay, so before I go to the next layer of what I want to do with this marigold, I'm going to come over here and do a carnation. Why? Because I need to allow all of this to dry before I go again. If I don't allow it to dry before I go again, it's just all going to blend and everything's going to turn purple and it's not going to be cute. So I'm going to allow that to dry, and I'm going to come over here. Now with a carnation, I'm going to do the same exact thing, except for I'm going to be jagged with my motion. So I'm going to load up my brush here, make sure I'm ready to go for another one. Okay. Now with this guy, I'm going to make him slightly bigger just because why not? And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to press down, and then I'm going to wiggle as I wiggle as I'm still kind of trying to do that comma. Remember how we made little commas here? We made little swooshes. Same thing here, except for I'm back and forth. So for me, my hand is doing this. This is the motion I'm doing. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm still kind of bumping up and out. Let me try that again. I prefer to turn my paper. It makes it way easier for me to do this. I recommend you do the same thing on your paper. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to press down, and I'm going to wiggle it. And I'm going to kind of come up a little bit as I'm wiggling back and forth. And then I'm going to come back down, wiggling. And there you go. That's a petal. I'm going to continue doing this until I got a complete circle the entire way around. So I'm going to stamp down, and I'm going to wiggle going up, and then I'm going to wiggle coming back down. See that? It makes a cool little blend. I'm going to show you a close-up of what I've got here. See? Check out my close-up. It's got a little bit of a blend. Now, if I was using black paper, this white part of the petals would turn out super wow, and they would like totally pop. I happen to have ran out of black paper. So, but either or, it's the same thing. Okay, so now be careful that you don't put your hand down back on where you're painting. Be very careful with that. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to step down, press it down, and then I'm going to wiggle back and forth, up and down, while I'm also moving my brush in a big arc. And then I'm going to come back down. I notice I need to add a tad bit more paint over here. Now, I'm not using floater medium at this time because I'm getting a really good consistency with my paint. I'm going to press down, wiggle, as I'm also making the brush go in a arc. There we go. Now notice how each of my petals, check out a close-up here. Do you see that? Each of my petals has its own little unique personality. They don't have to be all super uniformed. So when you have these little details, this is when your flower is going to start to look extra special and have its own unique little thing that it's doing. Own little personality. Okay. So I'm going to allow that to dry. This looks like it's still super, super wet. So I'm going to go here and make another flower. Let's try this one again. And don't worry if you're not getting it right now. Don't worry. This is the first time, okay? And if it ain't your first time, it takes time to practice and to get it right. I've been doing this for many, many years. So don't stress out if your petals are not coming out super, super perfect. It takes time. Okay, I'm going to alternate. And I want to alternate. I'm going to put one of these here and one of theirs there. This is the marigold. This is the carnation. Put another carnation here. Because if I were to show you this one right here, when I go to paint this one, my hand will be all up in my space. So be careful with that so you're not moving the paint around with your hand. All right, so, okay, so I'm going to set it down. I'm going to wiggle up to the left, back to the right, 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 and then kind of rotate a little bit. Back to the right, up to the left, back to the right, and there. This is more, I think because I didn't go up as much, I kind of made the petal a little bit longer. This is also a good style petal for a rose by making it so square. You can make, with using this process, you can make so many different types of flowers. I mean, really, honestly, there's a lot out there of what you can and can't do, and it's all based on how many wiggles and how long you go for the wiggle. That's basically the secret. That was a pretty one. I like that one. That's cool. Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one. And you know, this type of style of a painting would be really cool for, like, if you were painting some flowers on the canvas and then off to the side, like, let's say this is my canvas and then I have, like, I write down a quote or like a Bible verse or something, maybe somebody's name or something. What a cool painting, huh? Really cool idea. Okay, so these are all still super wet, so I'm going to let them be. Now let's go back and try a marigold since we just did the carnation. What makes these flowers cool is layering them. The more layers that you put on these, the more 3D they start appearing. You know what? The marigold is basically really easy, and it's the same idea, except it's the exact same of what we did with these petals. The only thing is you just don't wiggle. That's it. You just swoosh it and you don't wiggle. So let me show you how to do a marigold. Well, on the side, marigolds and carnations tend to look very similar. So let me show you a sideways view of this flower. We'll do a sideways one right here. So I'm going to press down, wiggle up, wiggle back down. I'm going to do a couple of these. And I'm basically doing the exact same wiggle, but the only thing is I'm not making my petals super wide. On purpose, I want my petals to be really, really long. I'm looking for long here. Okay. That was cool. I'm going to let that be and let it dry for a minute. Now this one is still amazingly super wet, and this is pretty dry, so let me go back here and show you again the second step. Now we're going to do the same thing with the petals, but what we're going to do is we're going to make the petals, we're going to overlap, but we're doing the same thing. I'm going to come here, press down, and I'm going to wiggle. And it's okay for these ones in the middle to be slightly smaller. That's totally cool. You're coming into the space a little bit. Don't cover up all your pretty work with the other petals. If you feel like you're not getting a good blend with your brush, go ahead and take a moment and wash it, clean it properly, go back into your floating medium, and then start again. That'll help you with the blend, because sometimes the brush, you know, if you don't have a white area and a purple area, then when you're trying to blend, it's going to be a whole drama and a half to try to get this nice pretty blend with these petals. There we go. So there is a second layer to that flower. I'm going to allow that to dry before I do a third layer. These ones, for the most part, appear to be a little bit dry. So I'm going to come over here and do the same exact thing that I did over here. Try to keep your inside of the petals a little bit smaller. All right, so I'm going to allow these to dry. Now I'm going to take a moment and wash my brush and go into a smaller brush. So set this aside. Now I'm going to show you the proper way to clean the brush. Now, wipe the excess paint off your brush. Do not push, only pull. That way you don't ruin your bristles. Okay, I'm going to go into my dirty water and I'm going to do an initial rinse. I'm going to go back and forth and lightly bend the bristles, just very ever so slightly. I'm going to come up here and bend ever so slightly to let some of that water out. And then I'm going to go back into my fresh water, wash it another time, and I bend the bristles ever so slightly, enough to get a little bit of the water out. And then I'm going to check it, and I'm going to go back into my paper towel, and I'm going to see if any paint comes off. Nope, nothing's coming off. That means my brush is clean. Yep, I'm going to do both sides. It's also making it into a nice, pretty edged point. And so this brush is good. I can just set it down on the table like that, off to the side, and it'll be fine. You don't need to buy a brush caddy or anything like that because we're using acrylic paint. We're not using any turpentine or anything with paint thinner and stuff. So you don't need a caddy. Okay, so now I'm going to go into this is the exact same type of brush. However, it's just a little bit smaller. Here was the big one, and here is the small one. So I'm in the same brush, angled brush, but smaller. Now, this guy has kind of dried a little bit, so because he's dry, they're still wet. I can go and we're going to do the carnation on the side here. Now I'm going to go in here to my floating medium. I'm going to coat the bristles really good. Nice little coating. Okay, now here, be very careful of blending. So I want to remember that on the top part of the brush, which is the pointy part that I'm using, I get a little bit of white. And then on the bottom part of the angular brush, I get a little bit of purple. Here's what I got. So now I'm going to rotate over here and I'm going to start a new path because that one's kind of large and it's going to blend too much. So I'm going to start myself another little swooshy path. Oops, it all went purple. See what happened? I blended way too much. Not a good idea. So what I'm going to do to fix it is I'm going to come in here, wipe off that excess purple. Then I'm going to go back into my floater medium, coat the brush, and I'm going to get some white. And I'm going to come back over here and put it on the side of the purple and then try to mix again. Need a little bit of purple. Now, when you're using a smaller brush, you have to practice more. They're much harder. You have to be more patient with yourself and really work with it. Really take the time to have patience. Okay. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the side of my flower, but I'm going to add some more petals and make it just a little bit more fuller. Oops, I don't got enough white. I really need white so it can stand out against that purple. So I made There we go. I'm going to add one more. You know what? I need to let it dry a minute before I go and layer on another layer. This one looks dry. That one still has some spots. So I'm going to load up my brush again with some white and some purple over here. And when I like what I have, when I do a swoosh that I'm really happy with and it's pretty, then I know my brush is ready to go. I'm going to come in here and do the same exact motion that I did with that larger brush, except for this is making a smaller, this brush is doing the same thing except for just making a smaller brush, petal, because it's a smaller brush. And I like to rotate the paper. If you don't like a petal, like I don't like what I just did there, that's okay. I can load up a little bit more paint, and then I can just come back and repaint over that petal. And there you have it. So here is a front view of a carnation. Let's do it again over here. Let's give it another third little level. And be patient with yourself. Your painting's not going to look super perfect in the first 5 minutes. It's going to take a little bit for you to like put the layers, and it takes time to work it, and then you get something super awesome. Wow. So don't be discouraged in 5 minutes if it ain't working. We're doing the same back and forth method that we did on the other petals. And if you feel like you're not getting a good contrast between the white and the purple, the best thing to do is wash your brush correctly and then load it again correctly, and then you'll have a better success. But if you keep trying to do these petals and you don't take a moment to wash your brush, your petals are just going to continue to not be, they're going to be too blended. And then you won't get that contrast. There we go. All right, this has dried just ever so slightly. Or you know what, let's do this one. Remember the marigold? Okay. So I'm going to start with these guys first. Now with this one, like how I wiggled with those ones back and forth, I'm not going to do that with the marigold. I'm just going to swoosh it like I'm making a comma. Okay. And that's pretty much a marigold. You continue the process over and over again until you have layers. The more layers you put on your marigold, the more it's going to appear to be 3D and round. I've only have 2 layers right here, so it does look a little cartoony, a little flat, but this is practice. I'm just showing you the strokes. So had this have really been a painting, I would have made the middle part a little bit bigger, most likely. I would have given it at the minimum 3. I usually like to always give these flowers no less than 3 layers of petals. If you can do 5 layers of petals and you have the patience and you're really doing it, the more levels you do, the better, the more it's going to be amazing. So if you can get 5, try to go for 5, then go for 3. But anyways, I'm going to do just a little bit more here to give this a 3rd layer on this guy. And that's cool. I'll probably do another one right here. Ah! All right, so that's a sideways. Now I'm going to show you how to continue. So I'm going to start doing some leaves now. I'm going to take a quick second, wash my brush. I always like to wipe off the excess paint. I go into my dirty water. When you are doing this, don't press your bristles down too hard at the bottom of the basin. You're going to ruin your brushes. Do a slight bend to get some of that water out. I'm going to take a second rinse into my clean water. Bend the bristles ever so slightly. All right, this is clean. So I'm going to go back into my medium brush, which is a step up a little bit from what I did earlier. And I'm going to need some green and yellow. I'm going to make, let's see. Let's do the inside of the leaf green and the outside yellow. Just a little bit, only take out as much paint as you're going to use. Now I'm choosing to put my yellow on the left of the green on purpose. The reason why is it makes it really easy for me when I'm loading the brush that I don't have to think about what side goes where. So I'm going to come in here with my clean brush, go into my floater medium. This is going to help my paint to be able to blend a little bit easier and be more gooey to work with. It doesn't really extend the life of the paint where it keeps the paint moist. It just helps me that it's kind of chunkier when I go to blend the colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow on the pointy part of the angled brush, and on the bottom part of the angled brush I'd take a little bit of green. Here's up close what I've got, the green and the yellow. And then I'm going to go back over here between the two colors, and I'm going to go back and forth just a couple times. I don't need to be going a million times, just enough until I find something that I like. And I kind of liked that. On my second try, I liked that little mixture I got. So now, notice how I left gaps in between my petals. That was on purpose because that's where I'm going to put my leaves. So I'm going to take this space here, and I'm pretty much making a petal. So I do recommend trying to keep with the same type of leaves for a flower that you're trying to do. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm painting my own world, so I can do whatever leaves I want to do with whatever flowers and whatever colors, because this is my imagination and my world. And yeah, so don't worry that, oh, well, it has 3 and not 4 points, and it's not as pointy as it should be. Don't get in your head like that. Just let it happen. The better you get at these, the more you can start being like, well, okay, maybe that, I should really be with this style or that style, but that's on your own preference. So I'm just going to paint to paint. Now, typically carnations, they have, I'm going to show you a leaf, and then after I show you a leaf, I'm going to come over here, and then I'm just going to show you a bunch of leaves together. I think it'll be easier for me to teach it that way. So let's just do one thing at a time. Otherwise, if I do a bunch of leaves, it's going to be a lot more to cover really quickly. So I'm going to show you the basics here first. I'm going to start here, and I want to do the same as my petal, where I drop down and I wiggle up, I wiggle down, I wiggle up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and I kind of make it long. Do you see how I made it long? I did the exact same thing as with my petals on the flower, except for instead of coming out and around like an arc, this is very archy, like a comma, I just wiggled straight, and I did give it ever so little bit of an arc at the very end, not a whole lot. So now I'm going to turn my my paper to make it easier for me when I do the other side, so I don't have to strain and turn my brush and paint in a weird, awkward angle. Okay, right here. Let's see. And I'm doing the exact same thing that I did on the other side. And that's it. That's how you do a leaf. let me show you. And again, I'm going to do this repeatedly over and over and over again, okay? Then we're doing practice right now. So this is all practice. This is another reason why we're painting on paper. We're saving money here. So practice before you start going and painting this on a canvas. Don't waste your money. Practice first. Okay, so I'm going to set it down, wiggle up, back, up, back, up, back, up, back, up, back, and honestly as many as you want. And then back. I like to finish the point of the leaf by coming back. I notice it just makes it a little bit nicer. It's a little more pointier. So now I'm going to do the same thing. There we go. Make sure I'm in the camera here so you can see everything I'm doing. I'm doing that wiggle, and then I'm going to come back at the end. And you can bring through. If I bring it through at the end, when I come here and I'm going back, it makes a little line. So like on here with this leaf, if I wanted to make that line, I could just make a little tiny one as I'm going. That's more advanced. I would recommend just practicing the wiggle first for a minute, and then when you get really comfortable, then go ahead and do that. I'm going to take a quick moment and clean my brush just because it's a good habit to get into. All right, so let's add another fun leaf right here. I'm going to, since I wiped off my brush, I'm going to go back into some of this floater medium to help me blend the colors easier. This floating medium, I honestly truly feel is why my leaves are coming out super good right now. It's almost like having training wheels. Okay. Let's see, where else do we want to put a cool leaf? Let's put one right here. Remember to keep your leaf a little bit long and then bring it back. When you're at the end here, bring it back just ever so slightly. Now I do kind of rotate my brush. I want you to notice something. My brush is this way when I paint, but then I'm going to come back and go this way. And when I do that, notice how instead of my point being to the right, I turn it and now my point is back to the left. So that way I want to be able to make sure that the yellow is on the outside of the leaf. And by doing that, I do have to rotate the brush when I do the other side. There's a leaf. I just love these colors together. Aren't they beautiful? Like, I have so many, it happens to me where people ask me my favorite color and this and that, and I like them all. All the colors are good for many different reasons. There's many different moments where, yeah, it just works. And a step, set down, up first, back, up, back, up, back. Many times. There, that was like 12. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wiggles on that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know. I guess I do 9. I just do it until it feels good. When it feels good and I have I've painted these a million times and I have this like muscle memory that I've just gotten over the years, and 9, just that when my hand feels like, yes, I did it, that's when I stop. Ooh, beautiful. It's really coming alive. Don't worry if your flower isn't super perfect right now and your leaves suck. Don't worry. It took me many years to get to this level of practice. And I've practiced, okay? I've spent some money on paper here to practice, you know, like I've gone through many thick books. Like, see this book, how thick it is? I have done these flowers on like 30 of these type of this amount of paper of books. So that's why I'm to this level. So it's something you really got to practice. So I don't want you to get stressed out. Don't cry. Just keep going with it. And one day it's just going to happen. And you know, sometimes I still come out with flowers that are you know, it happens. After all these years, it's still, I have moments of So don't be hard on yourself. Love yourself and be patient. All right, so we kind of got the gist right here of how to do these leaves. Now let's move on forward. These leaves that I did here for the carnation, same thing. It's pretty much the same thing as we did here, just over there, just add them. I would use maybe a smaller brush because it's a smaller flower. Okay, so let's do a side view here. We got the flower petals, so now let's add a stem. Now it's the same thing, but I'm gonna pull. I'm almost like dotting it. Almost like I did little dots. I didn't really pull. I mean, I pulled ever so slightly, but it was more about just kind of dotting it. You can go back over them if they're not quite pretty and you're not really seeing that yellow. You can stamp back over it. Okay, so now that I want to do the stem, make sure you load your brush good. You have plenty of paint to do a stem. You need enough paint so it'll work. I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to pull. And there we go. Sideways view of the flower. Now I want to show you a different type of we already got the leaf, so now I want to show if we're doing a grouping. Carnation, let's see, excuse me. Carnations have groupings of flowers, where the marigold is more just, they're like longer and bigger. So I'm going to do a grouping here. So I'm going to make a petal first, and I'm going to keep these kind of small just because I have a small space to work with here. So I did the same thing that I did here, except for I made my petal really long and skinny, and therefore it turned it into a leaf because I have green and yellow. So the green and yellow is really saying it's not a petal, it's a leaf, and it's long and skinny. So it's a cross between doing this one and doing this one, except for making it really super skinny. So then I'm going to come over here. So I'm pressing down, squiggling it back and forth, keeping it small, and then trying to come back down. Let's try that again. So now I want to make they're going to be a bunch together like they're on the same stem. So that was the top of the stem. This is going to be on the side. I'm going to do another one here. I'm going to press it down and I'm going to wiggle really fast, and I'm hardly going to travel on the paper. I'm going to come back here and then I'm going to wiggle back down. Going to do it again. I'm going to press and I'm going to make this, it's a comma type idea shape if I was using a pencil, and it's really long and skinny. The point is long and skinny. Hardly traveling with the brush at all. See? I told you, what did I say? Sometimes they don't turn out pretty. And when they don't turn out pretty, oh, okay, whatever. You know, we're practicing. So don't get hard on yourself. I just made a really bad one. So it happens. All right, so now that I have those, I'm going to make a line. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. That's pretty much it for the most part. There's a bunches of flowers. And just practice. I feel like I went too far down. I should have given more space so that way they could have a little space. They have a little stem, and I didn't add a stem, and now I feel sad that I didn't. But that's okay. So let's do a leaf again. So we're going to set it down. We're going to push out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, back in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That got 5 wiggles. Then I'm going to come over here, turn my thing. And yeah, I am going to have to turn my brush as well because I want to keep the yellow part on the outside of the leaf. So turn so that you have the yellow on the outside. And there we go, there's another leaf. And notice how I made this side a little bit wider than the other side. By doing that, you give a little bit of a 3D look, that you're that the leaf is turned ever so slightly. All right, let's do that again. Okay, so very skinny on one side, and now this time I'm going to make it a little bit fatter on this side. Oh, ooh, messed it up, party foul. There we go. And now do you see how it looks like it's kind of turned a little bit? Like we're not really seeing this part of the leaf so much, and we're really seeing a lot of that leaf, like it's kind of tilted this way. All right, this is coming along good. Let's do another leaf. Oh, I can show you a different kind of leaf. How about that? Let's do a different kind of a leaf. So I'm going to make this guy round. This is going to be a really round type of a leaf. So the only difference, I'm doing the exact same method I was doing earlier. The only difference is I'm just allowing I'm allowing my little strokes to come out a little bit further. See that? It's rounded. So you can either make them like this guy is really long and skinny. This guy is round. He's half skinny, half round. Let's put a little leaf onto this guy. I should use a smaller brush, but I'm being lazy right now. So I'll just wiggle, but I'll just do it very small. Right there I did 4, and I really didn't wiggle my brush back and forth that far. I tried to more just turn the paintbrush more than wiggle, but I still wiggled enough to get some points in there. Notice how I'm rotating my hand ever so slightly, and I pull in. When you're finishing the tip of the leaf, pull back in. So when you get to the end, pull in, don't pull out. There we go. That was a pretty one. I like that one. It almost looks like a lily pad type of a leaf. And do one more. There we go. See, I kind of gave him a personality. You don't want all of your leaves and petals to look identical. You want them to each have a personality. Okay, so I'm going to show you some ways to finish these flowers. They're not done yet. We're still, remember how I told you to put on layers? That's what we're doing. We were allowing them to dry. Okay, so I'm going to wipe off the excess paint. Don't push, only pull. Now you can use a cloth rag. That's totally cool. The reason I don't use a wash rag is because I have a brand new washer and dryer and I don't want to put paint in there and kill my washer and dryer, and I'm too lazy to wash it by hand. And paper towels biodegrade pretty fast compared to like a towel would. And it is what it is, you know. I don't want to waste, but it's kind of part of the deal, right? Of painting that, you know, byproducts happen. But notice how I'm still on my same paper towel. I haven't used a million paper towels, okay? So less is more on this one. And I'm just too lazy to wash a painting rag by hand. And I don't know, I feel that the paper towel, I'm using Bounty, I just feel that it's very absorbent compared to like painting with a towel. I just noticed that in my end results, I just prefer it way better than a rag. I recommend that you try yourself, like for you, like try paper towels, try a rag, and then in the end of the day, whatever makes you happy, stick with that. That's really a lot of how I learned how to paint. Well, I did go to school and take a lot of classes and everything, but at the end of the day, I think what really I gained in experience was it just doing it. Just the act of painting itself and going through the motions and just working it. I feel like this. I read books, I watched all the videos, I did everything, but it wasn't until I actually started going and doing it that I really, when I started doing it, that I really I started really, you know, being able to do it. So you need to practice. Okay, so we're going to make some other petals. Now I've changed. Remember how we were using the medium brush? Now I'm on the really tiny, small, angular brush, and I'm going to do some really tiny little petals in the middle. And this is really just going to make it pop. Okay, so I'm not going to use this little section that I already used right here with the paint. I'm going to come over here and create a new one, a new area. Kind of got too much paint on there. Okay, back and forth till you get something you like. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and do swooshes. Remember how we did little swooshes down here? Same thing. I'm making little dots, and I'm going to rotate, and I'm just pretty much dotting. I'm not pulling, I'm just dotting. That's it. So let's do that again. Load up your brush and then just dot. Maybe a little swoosh if you feel you need it, but if you don't need it, don't do it. You really want that white to stand out from the purple. It wants to be seen. Same with this guy over here, with the marigold. Make sure that your brush is loaded and it's really good and ready to go before you before you apply the paint onto the flower. And if you don't like it, you could always paint over it again. It's very flexible. And that's about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the flower. Yeah, I like it. You know what I feel like? Let's add, I want to show you, now this is a carnation. It doesn't have these type of leaves on it, but I want to just show you, just so I can, one more thing to show on, a different type of a leaf. And I'll just use this as an example. So we have our flower, we have the stem, and come back over here. Okay. These little brushes are very difficult to load. Okay, so I'm going to make, just how I made my little line here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tiny another skinny line. But then I want this to come out and around. So this one is going to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to press sideways, ever so sideways with it. It's going to come back up to a point at the end. We want it very pointy. If you don't like it, you could always paint over it until you get something that you like. And that's a different type of a leaf, a sideways version of the leaf. It could be this leaf, but maybe sideways. So that's a lot of fun. I'm having fun painting today. This has been exciting. Okay, so I'm not done painting yet. I still want to continue. So how about we try to do the flowers one more time? Just 'cause I'm having a lot of fun hanging out with you today. And get out my paper. Multimedia pad. Again, they're not paying me. I don't make any of this money. It's just so that way I'm not answering the same question over and over and over again. Of like, what products are you using? So I'm going to take off the edges here. The reason I choose multimedia is because it's a little cheaper in the store than buying paint paper. And I'm just practicing right now, so I'm not going to use a canvas because it's only like I buy my canvases in bulk and stuff, but still, I'm going to reserve those for non-practicing times. Otherwise, I'll have some random paintings that I don't like, because oftentimes my practices are that they're not my best work. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick moment here, make sure I have my little brush washed and cleaned properly. Okay. I'm going to fold this sideways so that way when I'm drying my paper I can work on the other side of my paper towel. Alright, so let's do this flower again. I squirted out way too much paint. A little upset and annoyed at myself that I did that. Don't waste your paint like I did. Of course, you could consider it a happy accident and say, well, I have to practice more because I squirted out all that paint. So then it's like, it's a mind teaser, like I'm gonna practice till my paint is done. Otherwise, I'm wasting money and it's forcing me to move forward. Okay. So a little bit of purple, a little bit of white. And see what I just did there? Check that out. little bit together. Notice how I didn't mix them. They're still separated in color. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times, not too many, just until I get to a point where I'm like, ooh, that's cool. I like it. That works. And when I get a swoosh that I like that works, then I'm going to come over. I'm going to do a central one right here. I'm going to, okay, so press down and then out, in, many times. Yeah. If you don't like it, let it dry and then repaint over it. Back and forth, wiggling back and forth. I always press out first and then back in. And then when I always start in and exit in. So I go out and then squiggle, but then when I come and I finish the stroke, I come back in. Don't worry if you don't get it the first time you ever paint. Relax. Just keep practicing. Eventually you'll get it. Don't stop practicing. I've been painting this for years and I'm still over here practicing. That's the secret. Practice. And there we go. It's nice. I like it. It's good. Want it to dry. Needs a moment. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing a second layer. I didn't get a lot of purple on that one. It's okay, I can paint it again a second time. See that? Fix the boo-boo. Fix the boo-boo. That's what's nice about painting. You know, we're always trying to be perfectionists. And it's like, you just always paint over it. You know? I used to stress so much, and the more I paint, the less stress I get, and I think it's because I'm doing it all the time and I'm back and forth. When I was first a painter, I cried a lot and I hated all my work. And sometimes I still hate my work. It happens. But the more I do it, the more I'm practicing, you know, the more that I'm able to allow my anxiety to go away. I used to be super OCD about my painting, and I realized that when I let it flow and I let it just happen and let little happy accidents happen, that's when my really good work comes out. Happy accidents are a good thing, and they're what make me a great painter. So they're blessings. And don't worry, if your flower doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry about it. I've been doing this for a million years and I've practiced a whole bunch. That's why they're looking like this. I mean, I also do think there is the type of brush I'm using, the type of paint, the fact that I'm using flowing medium, floating medium. You know, all these little things come together. I have good lighting right now in the art studio. I can see what I'm doing clearly. I'm not tired or hungry or moody. Like, there's a lot of little elements that come into factor when painting. Sometimes it's good to just zen out for a little bit and just paint. I'm going to let this be right now. I'm liking it. I'm going to let it dry. Well, you know what? Nah. Let's continue. Typically, if I wasn't teaching a class right now, I would allow this to dry completely, and then I would add more layers. Like between each and every layer that I do, I would allow it to dry completely. But because I'm teaching a class, that's why I'm going a little bit faster. I do find good success when I'm patient with myself and I allow the paint to dry. So I loaded my brush. I like the load that I have. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add dots. I'm just going to dot it up in the middle. And these are going to be little tiny petals that are just so small that I can't even swooshy it because they're just so small. Then I'm going to come in again and just make smaller petals, where I'm just really pretty much just adding white at this point. There we go. And there's a flower. So let's go ahead and make another flower down here. The more we practice, the better we're going to get at this. Notice how when I made these petals, I made them a little bit more pointier. This flower is very round, and then this one I kind of came up and came back down, and now my petals are a tad bit pointier. That's just to give variety in the painting. If you don't like a petal you do, you can always paint back over it. There we go. And here's a flower. I'm gonna come over here and let's do another one. These flowers can go wherever you want. Now I'm gonna try to do this again, but I'm gonna make these petals a little bit pointier. This is more of a hibiscus type flower. It's almost like I'm doing the same exact pattern that I did for the leaves. Notice how a change of color really changes things. Oops, I touched the painting on my arm. Try not to do that. There we go. Flowers are looking good. Looking really good. I'm gonna do one right here. I made this guy kind of small. You know what I did here? I had a happy accident, and this is good so I can show you. This is like, oh my goodness. I can't remember the name of the flowers. They're the summer flowers that everybody has. I can't remember the name right now, but they're the ones that have the 4 petals. You oftentimes see them in like a blue, yellow, purple. Like they have the like 3 different colors all together, and then they have the little thing in the middle. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of these flowers. So they're 4 petals. They're usually 2 long ones and 2 small ones, and then they have like a dot in the middle, and you usually see them like white, blue with some yellow. They're North American flowers. I see them all the time. I can't remember their name. I'm so sorry. But that's a different type of flower. So you can change up the style of your flowers based on how many petals you're adding into your flowers. So, I mean, it's the same concept, same back and forth motion. It's just how many petals are you adding? And are your petals going to be pointy petals, or are they going to be rounded, flat petals? Really changes the look of the flower. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wipe off this brush and clean it, and I'm going to now do a whole bunch of leaves. Okay, so now that I got all the color out, I'm going to do some leaves. So I'm going to go into, oops, I need a tad bit of yellow. Only take out as much as you're going to use. Don't waste your paint for no reason. So I'm going to take some green and I'm going to take some yellow. So look at how I've loaded my brush here. Check this out. Got the yellow and the green together. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make a new one just cause, start myself a new one. I'm going to go back and forth a couple times until I got something I like. Maybe I need to add a little bit more paint. Work it until you're happy with what you have, and then when you're happy and you like your two little stripes, then let's do some leaves. So, I need a leaf right here. So it's going to be the exact same things of the flowers. But I'm going to make this leaf a little bit rounder, just so that way it doesn't look like another petal. I want the leaves to look a little bit different than the petals. And they will because of the color change, but you know, with the thickness of whether it's long and skinny or it's fat and round. There we go. And because I'm wiggling, that's how you get those lines in there. Like, look at these petals. You really get it's the wiggle. Like right here on this petal, it's a really good one. You really see those lines. It's because of the wiggle. The wiggle is important for this type. I'm going to do that again over here. Notice how when I did that one, I didn't turn my paper and I just continued the brush stroke over, but then I ended up getting some green at the very end here. Because that green happened on the edge like that, it now makes it look as though this leaf is not flat, but it's rather kind of folded in on itself just ever so slightly, and we can see the underside where it goes green again. That's a cool look. I'm going to take a quick moment here and wash out my brush because I don't really want that to happen again on my next leaf. I like to have all of my leaves have a little personality of their own. Every petal and leaf wants its own little unique personality and style. That's what's going to make it look more natural and realistic. Let's do another one. There we go. And I'm just going to fill up my whole paper practicing leaves back and forth. I like that one. That came out really good. That's a good one. If you can get your leaves to look really cool, your flowers are going to look that much awesomer. Try to really work on the leaves and make that a goal to really to perfect your leaves. Remember, when you're done at the tip of your leaf here, you want to pull the brush back in. Otherwise, you won't get a really crisp, clear point on the end. I'm having so much fun painting today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I needed this. This is such a nice break from the world. I was having a stressful day with homeschooling because the COVID shut down the school that my kid goes to, and I needed to have a break so bad. I didn't go to the university to learn how to teach. I'm figuring it out as I go along. I went to the university to be an artist, and teaching a ninth grader, and she's in the moment of life where I do what I want. I'm a first-time mom here. I'm still figuring it out as I go along. I like teaching adults. I find that teaching painting classes it's much easier for me. I have a lot more patience with adults than I do with young children. Well, you know what it is? It's just sometimes kids, they just don't have they're there because we make them and they have to be there. And so they don't have the I want to learn drive. Whereas when I teach my classes at the studio, usually it's women there for the most part. But guys aren't really into painting flowers. It's more of a chick hobby, I guess. But they're there because they want to be, right? And the little kids are there because they're being forced to have to be there. They'd rather be home playing the Nintendo. I know that when I was in the 9th grade, I was all about my Nintendo. So thank you so much for painting with me today, and nice little break to the stresses of everyday life. Don't feel like I got a good load. This happens every so often that you have to clean out your brush. When I first started painting these flowers, I was in the habit of washing my brush out a million times because I was blending too much and I wasn't getting that contrast between the two colors. And so the more I do these, the less I find that I really need to wash my brush. So you're going to find that the more you practice, the better you get, the less, but I still do. So clean your brush out, especially also too, because it does dry. Sometimes the paint if you leave it on there too long, it'll dry in your bristles and you'll ruin your brush. And I know that I'm being extra anal retentive here with washing my brushes, but my leaves are coming out pretty good. You know, my paintings, it's happening. Remember, only mix until you're happy. Don't overmix. Just get to a point of mixing that you're like, yeah, okay, that works. I like it. You could vary the size of your leaves and the shape of your leaves. It would suggest that there are other flowers around. But typically a plant will have pretty much the same type of leaves. I mean, that's the whole nature part of the whole deal. Now, I say when you vary, like this one, I made the one side skinny. And then I made this side is skinny and this side is a little bit fatter. That gives it the leaf is turned a little bit, and so that's kind of cool. But for the most part, these leaves are all roughly the same size because they're the same plant. Now, if you were doing like a vase of flowers, when I do a vase of flowers, I do whatever. I mix it up. It's my own little world. There are some times where with some paintings, I just don't care if I'm scientifically accurate. They look cute, I like them, I'll do them. Oop, not enough yellow on that. Need more yellow. So instead of blending here, I just picked up some yellow because I already have a pretty good mixture on my brush. Sometimes you can do that. You can get away with that. You don't always have to blend every single time on the palette. But sometimes it's, you should. This is knowing when to blend and to take a moment and just pick up some paint. That comes with practice. That sometimes you'll see it, you'll know it, you'll be, yep, I need to do it, or nah, I can get away with it. So it's just all in the moment. Remember to do those wiggles, because that's how you're going to have those little veins happening in the leaf, is by those wiggles. If your paint's getting all dry and it's not blending well, get back into your floating medium. That'll help. You could use a mister and mist your paint. I've done that, but I have floating medium right now, so I can just use that. Now, the floating medium, when they sell it in the store on the packaging, it's not supposed to be there to keep your paints moist longer. The whole point is so that way that the blending of the two colors can happen smoothly, especially with this paint. I'm using the Folk Art paint, Folk Art Multi-Surface Plaid brand. That it's the type of paint, it's very thick paint, very thick quality paint, and so the floating medium helps loosen it up a little bit. Kind of like Liquitex has the gesso, very similar. I don't know where else to put one. Maybe we could work on some more flowers. I just don't want to stop painting. I'm having such a good time. Now also sometimes what's cool in a painting, this is my signature, I always do this a lot in my art, where I like to have one petal or leaf that is just randomly there like it got blown in the wind. So I'm just going to do a random leaf right here. Like it's not connected. Oops, I went out. Look at what happened. I went out. I didn't go in. That's what happens when you go out. It's better to go in than out when you finish a leaf. Work with it. There, I'm going to make it like it's a very pointy leaf. Since I went out, I got super extra pointy, so I just got creative with it. Way to fix a happy boo-boo. I'm going to do one more here. Okay, so I'm going to do another one here. And go in! That one blended a little too much. Too much blending. And in. There we go. Okay, so because I like to have like my little random petal, I'm going to put my little random petal down here. I'm going to wipe off the excess on my brush, clean my brush for a minute since I'm changing colors. Go into a little bit of this floating medium. Coat my bristles. Want to make sure I have a good area of purple and a good area of white with a little bit of a blend in the middle. So go back and forth as many times as you need till you feel that you're getting a nice, beautiful stroke. Like that one, that looks pretty right there. I really like that blend from the white to the purple. It's a good blend. So I'm going to call it quits that I have the brush loaded correctly. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do just a random leaf, a random petal. Let's see, I'm just thinking what angle should I do my random petal? There we go. And there's my random petal. Just like that. And I think I want to declare this little piece of paper done. I'm pretty happy with it. It looks cute. I can continue. I mean, there's so many more cool things you can do. But I did want to keep this class a tad bit light and focused onto this one technique. I don't want to overload you with too much stress or anxiety. Just want to, a little bit at a time, because that's how I learned how to do this. A little bit at a time. Master one stroke, and then when you got it and you're good, then go and do another one. So we're going to keep it at this. I'm going to make some more classes where I talk about other different painting strokes and things that I do. And so that way you can grow and gain in your skill. But before you move on, please, I want you to practice, practice, practice. And when you get this really good and you're ready to go, then let's move on to the next one. I noticed as I'm looking at this that I didn't finish my flower up here. So I'm going to take a quick moment and do that really quick here. So I'm going to make sure I'm still in the view of the camera. Okay. So I have my brush loaded. I like the load, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do little ones. Little tiny ones. Little petals. There we go. So now that I have that, I'm going to make sure that it's loaded again. Really good. And I'm just going to do some little dots in the middle here. And these are going to be like the petals that are way too small that I can't really swoosh. Little dotty line things. There we go. And there you have it. This was so much fun. So if you want to share your picture with me, please share it with me. I'd love to see it. I'm all over social media, so whatever channel you use, like if you use Facebook or whatever, just send me like a comment, or you know, if you don't want to share it with the whole world, if you just want to share it with me, just send me a private message. That would be great. But how cool to share for everybody. I want to show off how cool your painting came out. So yeah, to tag me. Leave me a review, whatever it is, however it is easiest for you. Please send me a picture, because I want to totally geek out in the art and see how cool your painting is. Until next time, I'll see you later.